Imagine a dragon prince standing before his entire kingdom, knowing tomorrow he must unleash a fire that has never come. No flame, only smoke, and a secret shame that could shatter his future. Yet in the shadows of the palace, an unlikely teacher waits. Not a warrior or a scholar, but a human janitor with a lesson so simple it could awaken a power lost for generations. What happens when destiny and humility collide? If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now, let's jump into the story. In the high halls of Mount Dravalis, the palace stood like a crown of stone and crystal carved into the mountain's heart. Glowing crystals lit the corridors with warm golden light, casting steady beams across carved walls and polished floors. It was here, in a chamber larger than most village squares, that Prince Lyran of the Dragon Line paced back and forth with restless wings trailing behind him. Lyran was young by dragon standards, only 16 seasons old, yet old enough to be expected to show his strength. His scales shimmered blue like deep water, not yet the dark midnight of full royalty, but already carrying the promise of his bloodline. Tomorrow was the Ember Rite, the day every noble dragon must prove they could breathe flame before the court, before their families, and before the queen herself. The rite was not a game. It was tradition. It was proof of growth, strength, and destiny. Yet Lyran carried a shame that clawed at him with every hour that passed. When he tried to breathe fire, nothing came. He had the organs, the fire sac, the ignition glands. The healers confirmed everything was normal. The trainer, Master Torvak, said the body was strong. But when Lyran drew in air and pressed with all his might, only thin smoke curled from his throat. Again he tried. He pulled in a deep breath, forced the heat upward, and tightened his chest. A low cough escaped. Period. Followed by a weak puff of gray smoke. It drifted into the air like steam from boiling water and quickly disappeared. The shame felt heavier than stone. Useless, he whispered, shaking his head. Absolutely useless. The chamber doors opened with a quiet creak. A human janitor pushed in a small cart stacked with cloths and buckets. His name was Milo Hart. He had worked in the palace for years, moving quietly through its endless corridors, dusting gold, polishing crystal, and repairing what others ignored. He was an ordinary man with soft laugh lines near his eyes and a calm way of working that made even the grand halls feel less lonely. Milo bowed with respect. "Evening, Your Highness. Just here for cleaning." Lyran straightened, embarrassed to be seen in such a moment of weakness, but Milo's tone carried no judgment. The man began his work, dusting the carved shelves and wiping soot from a tapestry. He worked slowly, carefully, as if every corner of the chamber mattered. For a few minutes, only the sound of cloth brushing stone filled the air. Then Milo spoke, without looking up. "You seem troubled tonight, Prince." Lyran let out a sigh. "Is it so obvious?" Milo gave a small smile. "You've paced so much, you've nearly worn a groove in the floor. And I believe that's the 4th tapestry your tail has touched today." He pointed to a small scorch mark near the edge of a family banner. The prince groaned. "The Ember Rite is tomorrow. I cannot breathe fire. The words tumbled out quickly, the truth finally spoken. Milo paused, setting down his cloth. He did not laugh or look surprised. Instead, he nodded slowly, as if he had been expecting something heavy. That is a difficult weight to carry, especially with so many eyes watching. But maybe it is not strength you lack. Maybe it is something else. Lyran tilted his head. What do you mean? Every healer says my body is fine. My fire sac is ready. My lineage promises I should have more flame than. But when I try, I fail. Milo leaned on his cart. When I was a boy, I struggled to blow through a river reed flute. I had strong lungs, but the more I forced the air, the worse it sounded. Then, an old musician taught me to whistle first. It was a simple trick, but it changed everything. Whistling taught me how to shape air, how to guide it gently. It was not about power, but about control. The Dragon Prince blinked. Whistling is a human game. Perhaps, Milo said with a shrug, but it is also practice in shaping breath. Flame, like sound, needs balance. If you force too hard, it breaks. If you guide it gently, it finds its own path. Lyran considered this. All his life he had been told to push harder, to summon strength, to fight for control. But perhaps fire did not need force. Perhaps it needed rhythm. He looked at the man carefully. If anyone knew I was listening to human tricks, they would laugh me out of the court. Milo lowered his voice. Then no one needs. There is, and the small flame painted long shadows across the room. He turned back to the Dragon Prince and spoke softly. Here no one watches. Here, you're not prince or heir. You are only a student of breath. If you allow, I will show you how to begin. Lyran's wings shifted as he drew in a slow breath. Tomorrow's ceremony loomed like a storm, but tonight, in the hidden quiet of the storeroom, a new path had opened. Show me, he said. And with those two words, the future of dragonkind began to change. The old storeroom sat below the palace, like a quiet pocket of history. Dust lay thick on the floor, and broken trophies leaned against stone walls as if they were tired from long years of praise. A single lantern glowed on a ledge, casting a warm circle of light. Inside that circle stood the Dragon Prince, Lyran, and the human janitor, Milo. The lantern flame hummed softly, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Ready for something new, Milo spoke in a calm voice. Perfect for teaching and perfect for voiceover. We will begin small, he said. No flame, only air. Air is the road that fire travels. If the road is crooked, the fire stumbles. Lyran nodded, his wings settling against his sides. Fear and excitement shifted inside him like weather. Tomorrow's emberite still waited above them like a mountain. But down here, there was no court, no queen, no trainer. There was only a lesson in breath. Milo placed 2 fingers below his own throat. First, we open this door, he said. Think of a yawn. Not a loud one, just the gentle beginning. That keeps the throat easy. He then tapped his ribcage. Second door, the chest. Lift it like curtains opening to let in morning light. And last, the mouth. Shape your lips like a small circle. Not tight, not loose. Just enough to guide air. The prince tried it. He imagined the yawn. He lifted his chest. He shaped a small circle. He sent a slow breath forward. Nothing happened but a soft hiss. Yet even that hiss felt different, calmer, smoother, more balanced. "Good," Milo said. "Now I will show a whistle. Listen to how gentle it is." Milo positioned his lips and let out a clear, simple whistle that carried across the room. It was not loud, but it was steady. The whistle curved into the corners and came back soft, like a friendly echo. Liren listened with sharp attention, mapping the sound to the shape he had seen. He tried to copy it. A wheeze came out, then a cough, then a messy puff of air that stirred dust on the floor. Frustration grabbed at him. He fought the urge to push harder. "That is a good beginning," Milo said. "But you are pressing. Try less effort, not more. Imagine air sliding across a smooth stone, not crashing into a wall." Liren let the image form. A smooth stone, a quiet stream. He opened his throat again, lifted the chest like curtains, and made the small circle. He breathed softly. This time a thin, shy note appeared for a second, then vanished. His eyes brightened. "I heard it." "So did the room," Milo replied with a smile. "Now repeat. The body learns by gentle repetition, not by force." They worked in short bursts. Milo corrected tiny details with patient hands and simple words. He showed how the tongue should rest behind the teeth and how to let the jaw relax. Liren adjusted, tried again and again. Sometimes there was only air. Sometimes a faint whistle peeped out like a timid bird leaving its nest for the first time. After several tries, a small, clean note held for 3 heartbeats. Liren felt a warm tickle at the base of his throat, the same place his fire seemed to hide when fear took over. The sensation surprised him. It was not heat like a flare. It was heat like a quiet lamp. "There," Milo said. "Follow that feeling. Let the warmth meet the air without squeezing it. Think of guiding a friend through a door, not shoving them." Outside in the corridor, footsteps moved past. A pair of guards spoke to each other in low voices. Liren's chest tightened for a moment, and the whistle broke. He shut his eyes, breathed slowly, and found the 3 doors again. When the worry eased, the note returned. Milo lowered his voice. "Fear closes the throat. Kindness opens it. Be kind to yourself, especially when you miss." Liren tried a lower note, then a higher one, learning how each changed the feeling in his chest. When the note went too high, the warmth faded. When he kept it low and round, the warmth grew and slid forward. He focused on that round note and kept his breath smooth. A thin blue glimmer showed at his lips and flashed out. It was not flame. It was the promise of flame. He froze, then laughed softly. "I saw it." "So did I," Milo said. "Again, and this time think of drawing a line with a fine brush." Liren balanced the breath, eased his jaw, and pictured that fine brush. The blue thread returned, delicate and precise. It touched the face of an old shield on the wall and left the faintest dark stroke. The line was steady. The line was proof. "Control," Liren whispered. For the first time, control. Milo nodded. "Control is the hand that teaches power to make art." They continued. The lesson moved from whistle to breath shapes and back again. Milo showed a technique he called the river bend, where the tongue curled slightly to nudge the air sideways before sending it forward. Lyran copied, and the blue thread formed with smoother ease. Next came the open gate, a softer jaw that stopped the air from catching. Each adjustment added a small piece of confidence. Milo paused to let Lyran rest his throat. He poured a little water onto the stone where the heat had left tiny marks. The steam lifted in calm ribbons. "Tomorrow," he said, "the crowd will be loud and then very quiet. Remember that quiet is your friend. Start small. Let the first note be your anchor. You do not need to impress. You need to balance." Lyran considered the words. They sounded like a path he could walk. For years he had been told to blast, to overpower, to prove. Now he was learning to place, to guide, to trust. He practiced again, counting breaths between attempts so his body would not strain. The blue thread lasted longer each time. He learned to stop the flame cleanly with a final, soft exhale, so no cough spoiled the ending. He learned to look at a target, choose a path, and keep the line narrow. The lesson felt less like battle and more like craft. Milo stepped back and studied the prince with quiet pride. "You are ready for the first step of tomorrow," he said. "Not the biggest display, but the honest one. Begin with your note. Invite the warmth. Draw your line. If strength rises, let it. If it does not, you still own the line." They agreed to keep the training secret. They rehearsed the first breath once more, then let the lantern light guide them back to the stairs. 2. On the way up, the crystals in the wall caught their reflections and stretched them into soft shapes, as if the mountain itself approved of the new balance. At the top of the stair, they parted without ceremony. Lyran returned to his chamber, lighter by a weight he had carried too long. Milo wheeled his cart into the next corridor. Just a janitor again, but with a quiet smile that said tomorrow could be different. Above them, the grand halls of Mount Dravalis settled into night. The crystals glowed like patient stars. The mountain held its deep, steady breath, and somewhere in that calm, a young dragon's confidence finally took root, shaped by wind, guided by wonder, and ready for the rite that would test both. The morning of the Ember Rite rose bright and steady over Mount Dravalis. Sunlight poured into the high amphitheater through carved openings and enchanted courts, scattering light across the crowd of dragons who had gathered from every corner of the realm. Their scales glimmered in shades of gold, crimson, green, and blue, creating a living mosaic of color. Humans sat on carefully built platforms near the floor, proof of the lasting alliance between both species. The air buzzed with expectation, as though even the mountain itself held its breath for the ceremony to begin. Queen Selene, regal and calm, took her place on a raised dais. Her midnight scales glowed under the crystal light, and her amethyst eyes watched the circle below, where young dragons would soon prove themselves. Master Torvak, the strict palace trainer, stood tall beside her, his stern face showing no hint of kindness. The rite was ancient, sacred, and unforgiving. Each youth would step forward, draw from the fire within, and show the court that their flame was true. One by one, the young nobles approached. A bronze-scaled dragon sent out a neat fan of orange fire that curved gracefully into the ceremonial brazier. Cheers rose from the crowd. A pale silver dragon produced a long stream of white flame that burned clean and strong, earning nods of approval. Each performance added to the weight in Prince Lyron's chest. His turn was coming. The herald's voice rang clear, echoing through the hall. Prince Lyron of House Dravalis, heir to the throne, son of Queen Selene. The amphitheater fell into silence. Thousands of eyes turned to the blue-scaled prince. Lyron walked slowly into the circle. His steps were steady, though his heart raced beneath his ribs. He bowed to his mother and faced the massive brazier of star metal placed at the center. The brazier had been built to withstand the hottest fire. No ordinary flame could damage it. For a moment, the silence pressed down on him. Then he remembered Milo's words from the hidden lesson. 3 doors open, breath placed, not forced. The memory steadied him. He inhaled, opened his throat like a yawn, lifted his chest like curtains parting, and shaped his mouth into the small circle that guided the air. A soft whistle slipped out, faint but clear. Some dragons frowned, confused, but Lyron ignored them. He let the warmth build, not as a flood, but as a stream. The heat gathered in his chest, moved up through his throat, and shaped itself into a narrow line. Blue fire appeared. Not wild, not uneven, but clean and sharp like a drawn blade. It lanced across the air and touched the brazier with perfect precision. Gasps rose from the audience. Lyron held the note steady. He adjusted his tongue slightly, lowering the pitch, and the blue fire deepened in color. Purple edges shimmered along the flame, and then a second tone entered, soft and resonant, as if the fire itself was singing. The flame spiraled upward, twisting in a helix of light, and the sound of it echoed in the crystal dome above. It was fire, but it was also harmony. The brazier glowed hot under the controlled stream. Its enchanted metal began to shimmer. The spiral flame danced in place, balanced and sure. Dragons leaned forward in awe. Humans stared with open mouths. Never in living memory had the court seen a flame that not only burned, but sang. Queen Selene's eyes widened, and for the first time, Master Torvak's hard face broke into astonishment. The flame was not just proof of strength. It was something rarer. It was cord fire, a legendary form of dragon flame, said to appear only once in many generations. Cord fire required balance between breath, heat, and control, so perfect that it created both sound and light in harmony. Lyron felt his chest ache, but he stayed calm. He remembered Milo's advice, and, with grace, he let the fire fade on a steady exhale. Not rushed, not broken. The blue spiral narrowed, dimmed, and vanished like the last note of a song. For one long heartbeat, silence filled the hall. Then the amphitheater erupted in roars of approval. The sound shook the walls, and the banners hanging high above whipped in the force of dragon wings. Humans clapped and shouted with equal excitement. The air carried thunderous applause. Lyron stood tall, bowing once more. His heart pounded, but this time with pride, not fear. He had not only breathed fire, he had awakened something ancient, something forgotten. Queen Selene rose to her full height. Her voice carried over the crowd like rolling thunder. My son has revealed the gift of cord fire. It is not a fire of destruction alone. It is a fire of balance, art, and creation. In our oldest scrolls, it is written that those who wield cord fire heal, build, and inspire. Today, we witness its return. The crowd cheered again, louder than before. Dragons roared, their voices blending into a chorus that made the mountain tremble. Liren glanced toward the human section and found Milo. The janitor smiled, clapping with quiet pride. Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange, Liren gave thanks for the lesson that had changed everything. As the rite ended, attendants guided Milo from his seat, carrying an invitation sealed with the Queen's mark. Whispers followed him, curious and astonished. Why would a janitor be summoned by the Queen? What role had he played in the prince's triumph? In a quiet chamber, away from the crowd, Queen Selene faced Milo. She spoke with measured words. Your teaching has given my son a gift that no dragon master could provide. Cord fire has returned because you offered a simple path, a human way of breath. Such wisdom must not be hidden. It must be shared. Milo bowed deeply. Your Majesty, I only showed him a small trick. The prince did the true work. But the Queen's gaze held steady. Sometimes a small trick is the key to an ancient door, and you, Milo Hart, have unlocked it. The Ember Rite had ended, but its fire had only begun. For Liren, the shame of failure was gone, replaced with the honor of harmony. For Milo, the quiet janitor, a new road was opening. The crowd outside still roared, unaware that this day was not just a rite of passage. It was the rebirth of a legend. The Ember Rite had ended in thunderous applause. But for Prince Liren, the sound lingered inside like a softer music, one that hummed long after the crowd quieted. His fire had sung, and the court had seen it. Yet the true test came after the ceremony, in a smaller chamber, lit by steady lanterns and watched by fewer eyes. Here, Queen Selene and Milo stood face to face, the Dragon Queen and the human janitor whose quiet teaching had changed everything. The Queen's gaze was calm but firm. Her scales reflected violet light as she studied Milo. You have given my son a gift no master could. Cornfire was thought lost, and yet it returned because you shared a lesson of breath. This is proof that wisdom is not held by one species alone. Humans and dragons both carry knowledge worth sharing. Milo shifted slightly, still unused to such attention. Your Majesty, I only showed him how to shape air. The prince found the courage to try. Selene's voice lowered, more personal than royal. Courage grows when someone believes it is possible. You gave him that chance. And now, I would give you one in return. You will no longer walk these halls as a janitor. I name you human envoy to the court of Dravalis, and I ask you to teach what you call breath arts to our young ones. Milo's eyes widened. The words felt larger than anything he had ever carried. An envoy? A teacher? I am no scholar. I have no training in diplomacy. Lyran stepped forward, his wings folding close so they would not crowd the space. Mother, Milo has already proven his gift. Many young dragons struggle with flame. I have seen their shame, the same shame I carried. Let him guide them. What he taught me is not human alone. It is balance, and every dragon can learn from it. Queen Celine's eyes softened as she regarded her son, then returned to Milo. An envoy does not need polished speeches or ancient scrolls. An envoy needs honesty, patience, and perspective. You have shown all three. I trust you will show more. Milo bowed, his voice steady, though his heart raced. Then I accept, and I will give my best. I will listen first and teach second. Word spread quickly. By evening, a new space was chosen for the lessons. It was a hall beneath the East Library with high ceilings and wide floors. Lanterns glowed in steady rows, and the air moved easily through carved vents. The dragons began calling it the Wind Hall, a place where fire would learn to sing instead of roar. On the first day, half a circle of young dragons gathered. Their scales shone in many colors, but their eyes carried the same mix of hope and fear Lyran once knew. Some were princes and princesses. Others were children of lesser houses. All had come with the same worry, the fear of failing their flame. Milo began with silence, letting the room grow calm. Then he spoke gently. Fire begins with air. Today, we do not chase fire. We learn to guide breath. He whistled a soft note, the same note he had once shown Lyran, and asked them to try. At first came only wheezes, hisses, and awkward sounds. Some dragons looked embarrassed. But when one produced a squeak that echoed off the stone, laughter filled the hall. Not cruel laughter, but shared laughter, the kind that broke tension and opened throats. A small dragon named Corin tried again. His first breath gave only a sigh. Milo knelt, so his eyes met the young dragon's. Imagine a yawn. Now make your lips into a circle, like you are kissing a raindrop. Do not push, just place the air. Corin tried. A faint whistle slipped out, followed by a spark so small it looked like a grain of glowing sand. The room gasped, then cheered. Corin's eyes widened, and his tail thumped the floor in delight. Lyran felt pride stir in his chest. The spark had been small, but the meaning was large. It was proof that the path worked for more than just him. Master Torvak, who had come to watch, surprised everyone by trying the whistle himself. The sound that left his mouth was dry and uneven, but the old trainer laughed at his own attempt. A student again, he said. The younger dragons cheered louder at that than at the sparks. Day by day, the lessons grew. Some learned quickly, others took longer, but all found patience in the process. Milo brought flutes and small drums so they could feel rhythm in their bodies as they breathed. Lyran practiced alongside them, not as a prince, but as a fellow learner. The hall filled with notes, sparks, and laughter. Queen Celine often visited quietly, watching from the back. She saw her people learning something new, and she saw the bond between humans and dragons strengthen with each attempt. It was not just training. It was a bridge being built with every breath. After one lesson, the queen spoke softly to Milo. The alliance between our species was written on parchment long ago. But today, it's written in flame and song. That is stronger. A feast followed to celebrate the first week of the Wind Hall. Tables were heavy with roasted roots, honeyed fruits, and spiced breads. Humans and dragons sat side by side, sharing stories and laughter. In the corner, young dragons practiced little whistles, and now and then a spark of blue light flickered, floating like a star come to earth. As the feast grew louder, Liren and Milo walked the corridor together. Liren's wing curved carefully so it would not brush his friend. The prince's voice was quiet but sure. "Thank you, not only for saving me, but for opening this door for all of us." Milo shook his head. "You opened it. I only showed you the handle." They entered the feast hall, where joy rose like fire and music. Children laughed each time a new spark appeared. Dragons roared approval, not at grand displays, but at simple, honest beginnings. And in that hall, with sparks floating like stars and voices woven together, a new chapter for two worlds was written. It was not a chapter of conquest or fear, but of harmony. The door had opened, and on the other side waited a future where dragons and humans would learn together, breathe together, and build together.